It is interesting how difficult it seems for us to give an answer to one question. What does freedom mean to you? Is it feeling truly free, exuberant, and almost like falling in love, and filled with all the joy and happiness? Or is it simply living without boundaries? Sometimes what seems to be obvious isn't actually true. So, what does freedom mean? And which role do boundaries have in it? And what if freedom and boundaries aren't the opposites, instead playing together, making the other more meaningful? For me, freedom comes in all different shapes, sometimes surprisingly instant when I cool down and I feel more the here and now. How's that? Let me take you back to the year of 1989 in time. Some of you maybe remember the 9th of November 1989. The Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall came down. And together with 25,000 other athletes, other runners from all over the world, I stood as a former East German girl at the starting line of the Reunification Marathon, the Berlin Marathon, just 3 days before West and East Germany would be one country again. And this day was very meaningful day to me that I could not remember the falling rain on that Sunday morning. The race was about to start. And for the first time, the course would lead from West Berlin through the famous Brandenburg Gate into East Berlin, and then back to West Berlin via the famous Potsdamer Platz. And thousands of people were in town, all feeling their newfound freedom. And millions were watching on TV. And I was overwhelmed. Emotion had taken over. Even I was so prepared, I could not feel the starting line beneath my feet. Raindrops and tears of joy were mixing together. I was so emotional. So I remember I had to rein in my thoughts, and I kneeled down, touched the asphalt, and I talked to myself. Closed my eyes as I usually did before many of my difficult marathons or challenging marathons. And I said to myself, after all those training months, here you are in your hometown, after all the longing for freedom and peace and of unfortunately detours, my mind was spinning a whirlwind. And I remember familiar faces and forest trails, insecurity. And I remember I was there as an East German girl on the starting line in West Berlin. So I was so excited and nervous, but at the same time relieved. I had to refocus because the race would start. So I got up, took my typical breath when I would start my races. And I focused ahead, and I saw in the rain, in the distance, barely the victory column. Was it a sign? Maybe. I wanted to win. So we all launched, and we ran way too fast to the Brandenburg Gate, our symbol of freedom after 3K. And I remember I was so excited, I could hardly breathe. And I remember my legs. I said, okay, just shut up, legs. I will run peacefully and not too fast in the first part of the marathon. Maybe some of you know what that means. And so I remember I ran through the Brandenburg Gate, touched one of the columns very briefly, and a shiver ran down my spine. And then I came through and I saw the Pariser Platz, which stood for 28 years empty. No one could go there. And this time now it was filled with thousands and thousands of people, all enjoying their own freedom and their own happiness and tears of joy. But I couldn't linger. I had to focus. So I had to run this race. But to be honest, I can't remember much of it. What I remember is the home stretch and all the thousands of Berliners so joyful, the V feeling above their heads. And also an energy that gave me wings that I could run into the finish line and I could win the race. And I couldn't feel it was over. Was it really true that we now had freedom, that we could choose our own boundaries, that we could go on extraordinary journeys together and create boundaries that would respect the freedom of others? Alone that thought made me so strong and so fit, and that I could, even with the same training and with the same preparation, could run 2-3 minutes faster just because I felt I was free, just because I could shape my future for the first time. And the boundaries, I needed them because they were my strength and they were my focus, they were my resilience and never giving up. And also, they helped me to create something truly special with my training philosophy and my routines. Even if I lived free, I was able to use these boundaries to have tremendous success. They became my framework and my guidelines. And already after my first Boston Marathon, my friend said to me, Uta, with your freedom spirit, you should go and run with the wild horses of Colorado. And sure enough, I did. And first of all, I had no wild horses in my training base in Boulder, Colorado. But years later, I was able to visit the famous wild horses in the Sandwash Basin of Northwest Colorado. And I remember I took my camera and we took the truck and we drove somewhere in the wilderness there. And only then I remember this open vastness, this open plain, this wide land with small undulations and cliffs and the Vermilion Bluffs and the Lookout Mountain in front. And I was so overwhelmed because it was so peaceful and so quiet in this land. And sure enough, in the distance, we could already see them, the first band of the wild horses. For me, the first time I saw them, I was so excited, I could hardly breathe. And I remember we took the truck and we left them on the side, and we took our equipment and went out zigzag towards the horses, very careful. And my guide told me, Uta, be very careful with each movement, with each step, and very mindful. And there they were, the horses of all ages, grazing and playing and leaning against each other. And they were so natural. They knew that we had cameras, but they were so free. They had no fences or paddocks. They roamed freely, and still Sandwich Basin was not limitless. They gave us a glimpse into their social structure, into their strength, but also into their gentleness, and allowed us a glimpse how they have respect and strong feelings for their oldest mare, their alpha mare, their leader and protector. And I remember these horses lived in pure freedom, in absolute freedom, only bound by their lifelong bonds and strong bonds with one another. And ever since, the horses of Colorado embodied for me a sense of Freiheit, freedom. In watching them was a sublime moment. No picture could do justice. And so I just stood there in awe, completely attracted, and just watched them. Freedom to me means also to just express myself freely, like now, even if my perspective differs from others. And yet, I believe there is no absolute state of freedom. It's an idealistic state in the minds, I believe, we constantly seek. And freedom is maybe more in our thoughts or in certain situations, like a run when my legs carry me freely. I've read a lot about freedom in different cultures and with different philosophies, and I had a chance to discuss this with my friends and colleagues and people I work with. And I came to the realization that freedom is a really personal state of mindset. And even if I question already that there's a true or absolute freedom, I believe that freedom is idealistic, personal, and is constantly evolving, maybe like happiness. And in the sense of personal freedom, the power to choose becomes more essential. And yet, freedom is strongest and most purest in the minds. Experience fully bright choice and in moments that really resonate with us. So I came to all these philosophical ideas and thoughts, but there are some practical thoughts as well, and I would like to share them with you. And one practical approach helped me a lot to shed more light on this matter, and it is something what I created over the years, which springs from my past into your future, and it is a framework. What could it be? Free. So let's get free together. F stands for free yourself of judgment, simply by letting go of the constraints of self-criticism and letting go of external expectations, allowing yourself to act without the burden of perfection. And here I would meditate, I would calm myself down into a calmer state, into a deeper state of self-awareness and conscious awareness, simply letting go. And R stands for render your goal. By clearly defining your goal and bringing it to a vivid picture that sets your mindset and follows with your action. And here I would take 20 minutes out before I would go to a race or competition to clearly visualize all scenarios from race strategy to weather conditions to all other things, to be absolutely the best I could be under all circumstances. The first E stands for engage with challenges, in my particular case with pain. I was able to, over many years, I refined it and meditated, visualize it, also breath, was breathing pain away from certain areas in my body gently into areas where I had no pain. And then from there, when I had pain in the other areas, sometimes it worked, sometimes not. But I could run with this very fast and beyond limits, even if my brain would tell me, Uta, this makes no sense. But my brain would still say, I can do it, and I would run very fast times. And the last E is evolve, how to respond to situations, to any situation where I learned the lessons and where I brought my own ideas and philosophies and created positive ripples forward and try to bring the outside in, the hectic outside inwards with yet different techniques like loving kindness, and very important for our society, which we forget sometimes, self-love. And I would take these meditations and create mental patterns and refine them again and again and let go of old beliefs, knowing that I can choose and change my reaction to any situation at any time. Knowing that also after each low, there will be somewhat a better time, which I can dictate. So it remains. Freedom is very personal. We all experience it different, depending on our beliefs, on our hopes, our dreams, and our experiences. And of course, I can only talk for myself and from my own perspectives. They evolve constantly, and sometimes today they change and tomorrow they shift. But what remains is my belief in the inherent goodness of people. I'm a pure optimist, committed to the vision that we can make the world a better place where everyone has a certain and a good freedom. And finally, the biggest freedom is the freedom of choice, like choosing happiness. But both happiness and freedom are not so easy arriving. They require effort, like keeping our bodies healthy and our minds flexible. In the end, freedom lies in knowing that the responsibility for our happiness is always ours to embrace. So I leave you with one extended question. What does freedom mean to you? And where do you set your boundaries? Because when freedom, boundaries, and choices align, they create something very special, something worth living for. Thank you so much.